AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Mark Hookey. Mark is the CEO of Demystdata. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, JP. Great to be here.
Great. So before we go into Demyst, can you talk about what led you to setting up a company and what was the motivations behind utilizing the external data marketplace and how you came up with the idea for Demyst?
Sure. Well, I've always worked with teams of incredibly talented data scientists, both within teams that I've worked as well as on the client side. And it's a cliche at this point to say that wrangling data and dealing with data cleaning is one of the biggest unsolved challenges in the industry. And it's especially true in the world of external data. It's always been very frustrating that it wasn't easier to access the data that's already in existence. So while I was part of LexisNexis, there was amazing treasure troves of information internally and externally with clients as well as with partners. And I had great teams of PhDs from amazing backgrounds, but they couldn't get their hands on the data itself. And then when they got their hands on it, they'd spend 90-95% of their time structuring and cleaning it. So it wasn't really about the last mile AI problem. It was around the data access and data cleaning problem. And the interesting thing about the data marketplace is that its value is very much unknown until models are built on the data. So external data is particularly an interesting marketplace where people tend to not use a lot of external data that's already out there because figuring out whether or not it's valuable requires a very, very significant effort. It requires contracting with vendors. It requires information security diligence. And this is before organizations that use data understand whether it's truly valuable or not. So it makes it just too hard to test and try, and it means the market for data itself is very illiquid and much smaller than it needs to be. So I'm very, as an analytical technology guy, I'm very interested in the notion of using data more broadly in a compliant way and unlocking access to data, clean data, so that smart people can do smart things and build amazing models on top of it. And that was really the genesis of why I wanted to start Demyst.
Makes a lot of sense. You touched on compliance briefly, which we'll get to later on, but you talked about the idea and the origin. So look, for those who don't know, who are Demystdata? What are you doing? What services are you offering? And talk about some of the recent success you guys have had.
Demyst is an external data marketplace. We help data scientists take friction out of the process of accessing external data from a variety of sources. So an example might be a whole range of vendor products that are already out in the marketplace that have information about businesses and consumers and properties. Data scientists work through our platform to license access to that data for testing, for analytics, and for commercial use. And so by taking the friction out of the evaluation process, people can test and work with hundreds of vendors and tens of thousands of attributes in a matter of minutes through a single API, and often more importantly through a single contract, a single relationship with Demyst. And that means that they can rapidly and significantly increase the velocity of building analytics and deploying them into the market to create value for their end clients. We've been having some great success growing our business within the financial services domain, working with large banks, large insurers that have a voracious appetite for emerging alternate data to help solve customer workflow problems. So things like automating digital onboarding journeys, detecting fraud, cross-selling product, and we work closely with our partners out in the ecosystem. So just yesterday, we announced a partnership with Snowflake, the cloud the cloud technology platform where we're going to be partnering to populate some of their data exchange. And Demyst solves the problem of indexing, organizing, and accessing the data products that are in the ecosystem.
Yeah, look, clearly a huge market cap on what is a really essential service for the future of data-driven business. To talk about how you see the evangelical vision of this evolving over time, what areas are you focused on, and what are you most excited about for the future of not just Demyst, but this industry as a whole?
When we work with clients, and they do some amazing things. They find idiosyncratic use cases for data that create enormous value, and they end up consuming typically around 10 times more data than they previously consumed. And that's just one data point, but we're most excited about the massive increase in potential compliant data uses that are out there in the market. There's a treasure trove of data sources that people are unaware of that are already out in the marketplace. And it's not surprising because even at Demyst, we're onboarding about one data product per day on average. So it's really hard for data scientists to stay abreast of what's even out there. It's kind of like, buying a book prior to Amazon existing in the early days. People weren't even aware of the long tail of niche products that existed. So we're excited about all of the high value and high impact areas that data can be leveraged to add value. In the evolution of technology, whether it's early days databases or BI visualization with Tableau and whatnot, with AI development, what tends to happen in industries as technology providers reduce the friction of doing something down to practically zero. It used to be that it was a big effort to slice and dice data and put it onto a PowerPoint slide, and then BI tools came along and people can do that on the fly. It was the same thing with AI. It used to be that you could build predictive models on a quarterly or yearly basis, and it was a big effort. But now with H2O, with DataRobot, with Spark Beyond, you can do thousands of models in an hour. And what tends to happen in industries is people take friction out of the process of doing something. It's not like data scientists do it cheaper and take the savings. No, what tends to happen is people do things orders of magnitude more. They just do it more frequently, and they generate a heck of a lot more innovative solutions as a result. Data's the same. So we're most excited about the fact that when we can take the friction of getting and testing data down to minutes and hours rather than months, then data scientists around the world are going to find insights and opportunities and build solutions that we can't even possibly imagine here at Demyst.
I think it's a very important point that you touch on, allaying some of the scaremongering that data science as a profession may end up obsolete as becomes more frictionless, and companies like H2O, DataRobot speed up the process overall. I think it's important to let people know that there's always going to be opportunities for innovation in this space, which is great to hear. Changing direction slightly, you mentioned the opportunities of compliance. So I want to get your thoughts on the changing regulation in GDPR, and as a company who's going to be impacted throughout as this evolves, what are you focusing on? What are the potential pitfalls ahead you're going to have to navigate, and what is the next advancement that you see in leveraging this data in a compliant manner?
Compliance has been a big part of our business already to date. One of the primary value adds that we bring to organizations is helping them with us taking responsibility for the compliance of how data is accessed and delivered through to their systems. Compliance is a very broad concept. There's different subcomponents in compliance. There's the information security itself, making sure it's safe and secure and sound and nobody can hack the systems. There's privacy. So is the data provided with appropriate consent for a given use case, and how do you track that, and how do you manage that and understand that? And then there's ethics and all of its related concept, which is beyond the legal compliance side of things. Is it compliant with GDPR, CCPA? Is there consent, etc.? There's an additional overlay of ethics and morality. Are data scientists at an organization with industry expertise comfortable with using this data for this purpose? Does it pass the 60 minutes test of people feeling good about this being the right thing to do? So I think the industry is already well mature on the information security pillar of that. How do we make sure data is protected? But that's not enough. The second two pillars is what the industry is working on figuring out. So at Demyst, we see huge opportunities around helping data partners themselves up-level how they handle this stuff, which is not in any way to suggest that they're not compliant today. They don't get onto our platform or work with large banking organizations without having every box ticked. But there's opportunity to go even further. Things like third-party data provenance. At a transactional level, where exactly did this data come from? And how do you track its lineage end-to-end across all third parties, all the way back to somebody approving a term and condition or providing explicit opt-in consent? So there's a lot of opportunity for data partners that are out there to provide all of that metadata along with the data itself, and really improve the visibility and transparency into how these things are handled. Ethics, there's a great opportunity for organizations to become more systematic and structured in how they make internal decisions around ethical data use. So there's a lot of talk about ethics in AI. Is this non-parametric model okay versus this parametric model? But there's an underlying ethical question around ethics in the data itself, both internal data and external data. How do organizations structure their processes to make sure that they're comfortable with what's being used for what purpose? Even in today's world, even in the models that they already have in operationalization today, that's a big opportunity and a big challenge that chief data officers are talking to us in the industry about solving.
So Mark, you mentioned at the beginning, primarily right now your focus has been on the financial services industry because that's where the greatest demand has been. But as industries become more data centric and more data driven, where do you see the future of Demyst services and whether it be in e-commerce, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and the potential use case applications as this service evolves?
We've got a real focus at the moment on the data entities themselves. So consumer information services, small business information services, and information about properties. Now, retail financial services is an obvious application of that type of data, as is e-commerce and marketing services. There are aspects of healthcare where that information is relevant as well. So we see our focus, at least for the next few years, in being doubling down on what we do really well today and moving into adjacent verticals where there's already demand being around those data entities. We will carefully and with our partners look at adjacent data entities that are currently poorly organized and difficult to access. So we might look at areas in healthcare and pharmaceuticals over time. It's not really our current focus. Our current focus is how do we go deeper into what we have today, and we think we're already doing a pretty good job, but double down and do it even better. There's also the geographic dimension for Demyst. We have a lot of demand from organizations overseas, and we already have about 40% of our business that's outside of the US, mostly through Asia Pacific, although we now have some clients using our platform in the UK, and we're just getting started in Western Europe, but we have to figure out the geographic dimension as well.
Looking at the scale and the pace of growth, what's been the most enjoyable part of building Demyst and seeing it go from strength to strength, factoring in the various challenges you've faced along the way?
Well, there's a real maturing of the market for external data that has really only happened in the last year or two. Perhaps it's being fueled by compliance. It's certainly being fueled by the maturing and success of the AI platforms that are out there. Everybody's got their amazing technology platform and AI platform now, but they need fuel to feed the beast. They need data. So while alternative data and external data was something people talked a lot about 5-10 years ago, it was really only an edge case, an experiment, a test. It's really now become a strategic imperative for people. And in every vertical, the big incumbents are realizing that data is what is allowing the startups to steal customers and win. So every fintech, every insurtech, every health tech, every prop tech, you name the vertical, they would all point to their data access as being a strategic advantage. And the big incumbents are finally realizing that this is a critical imperative that they have to solve for. So what's most enjoyable at Demyst is we're in the right place at the right time, and we don't need to educate people on the value of data. That's a given when we go into conversations. And we get to spend all of our time with amazing data scientists, really just focusing on the business problem and the use case. The other thing I'd highlight that's really enjoyable is the data partners we have an increasingly deep relationship with, that themselves have treasure troves of innovative data that the market often doesn't even test. So even within the larger players, we have a great partnership with the big bureaus like Equifax and Experian and TransUnion and LexisNexis and while everyone in the data science community is typically aware of their primary product, like the credit bureau or some risk products, there's often a general lack of awareness of all of the amazing innovative niche products that these organizations have within them. So there's it's very rewarding to work within the ecosystem and help people that already have amazing data products bring them to market. So we enjoy that here at Demyst. We enjoy being the educational evangelists. We don't have to invent data ourselves. We don't have to manufacture data ourselves. We just have to really work with the data partners to deeply understand what they already have and help the data science community understand what's there. And data scientists at our clients, they have phenomenal capacity to join the dots between data assets and business problems. So once they know that the data exists, once they're aware of the fact that they can get it in a compliant, safe, easy way in whatever platform they already work in, then the creative juices start flowing and people build amazing solutions.
For the data scientists who are listening, this should be an eye-opening moment to what's in store and what the future holds. You mentioned earlier it's difficult to keep abreast. What advice can you give junior data scientists just starting out, just trying to get their head around this new profession and trying to make their way while keeping up to speed with what's in store in this ever-changing industry?
We're obviously a little bit biased, but I think one key point of advice is to not fall into the trap of focusing on internal data within an organization. Unless you're a data scientist at Google or Facebook or somewhere like that, chances are 98% of what you might want to know about a customer is external. So really starting to look externally and find out what might be out there already to represent the baseline set of information to build models against. That's something that we see as being particularly interesting. I guess another piece of advice we'd offer is this is sort of a given and important, but I'd like to reinforce it, which is learning to automate and learning to code is critically important in the world of third-party data as well as data science more generally. Technology platforms that are out there now give us the ability to leverage on people with brains, so that people with brains are spending 90% of their time using their brains, and as opposed to 90% of their time dealing with rote activity or data cleaning activity. So leveraging the platforms that are already out there, not just Demyst, but H2O and Data Robot and Spark Beyond and Python, TensorFlow, Amazon SageMaker, AutoML with Google. There's some amazing platforms that are out there, and data scientists can have such a force multiplier if they put their brain into using those platforms. But as you touched on earlier, JP, this doesn't make the data scientists redundant. Quite the opposite. The industry has now more than ever needed the expert knowledge of the human to overlay with the technology platforms to make sure the business experience of the industry is being overlaid into the analytical solutions. Not just because the regulators need that for explainable models, but because that's actually the right way to do good data science. So in the world of external data, for example, very frequently data scientists already have a decent understanding of what types of attributes they want to understand about people, about businesses, etc. They're just looking for ways to automatically get it. So I would offer those primary points of advice, which is learn to code, look externally for data, and don't forget about the domain knowledge of the industry that you're in. Just one final point on that last point there is often one of the best ways to learn that we find, whether we're helping people in a bank doing KYC onboarding, or an insurance company doing claims triage, or in a consulting firm looking at sales optimization, is sitting side by side with a non-data scientist and watching them do things manually, or watching them optimize the business processes today, can be one of the best sources of domain knowledge.
Some incredible pieces of advice there, which I hope has resonated with people listening. Just to finish then, Mark, look, you've built an incredibly successful business. A huge part of that is the talent which you've hired, some of which I've met personally who are amazing people. When assessing candidates for your organization as a whole, what stands out to you? What do you look for? And what can data scientists listening to this work on to improve their own interview skills, candidacy when seeking employment in this profession?
It's a great question. We look for grit, tenacity, grit, call it what you will. People that have persevered through business challenges, because getting an analytical initiative in any organization from concept all the way through to operationalization is no small feat. We look for egoless team members who can work on the problem and can debate about options and choose the right answer regardless of whose idea it is. And we look for people who are passionate about the data itself. That's something that you can, when you talk to people and they get very excited about not just the abstract concepts, but what it tactically means for the end customer associated with the problem. People who can join the dots between data sources themselves and data attributes themselves and what it means for the end customer. Obviously, there's the baseline skill sets and knowledge of certain technologies and experience delivering value to end clients and all of those things. But we find that the most impactful data scientists that we have within our organization and also within our partners and clients are, like any other profession in many ways, the folks that have that tenacity to persevere and the passion for the underlying problem itself.
Excellent. Well, Mark, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed learning about the origins of Demyst. Congratulations on all the success so far, and wish you all the best in the future.
Thanks, JP.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.